On August 4, 1983, an uprising in the West African nation, then Bota, a former colony of France, and among the world's poorest country, brought to power a powerful revolutionary government headed by a 33-year-old Sankara. A year later, this country of 7 million people renamed Burkina Faso, the land of upright man. Over a span of 4 years, the popular revolutionary government organized the peasants, workers, and young people to carry out deep, ongoing economic and social measures that curtail the rights and the prerogatives of the regional land aristocracy and wealthy merchants. They joined with the working people the world over to oppose imperialism domination. Mass organizations of peasants, craftsmen, workers, youth, women, and elders were initiated. With broad public support, the government abolished tribute payments and compulsory labor services to village chiefs. It nationalized the land and guaranteed rural toilers, about 90% of the population, access to fruits of their labor as productive farmers. The price peasants received from the government for basic food crops were increased. The government launched a tree planting and irrigation projects to increase productivity and to stop the advance of desert in the Shell region in the north of the country. It organized massive immunization campaigns and made basic healthcare services available to millions. By 1985, infant mortality had fallen over from 208 for every 1,000 live births at the beginning of the decade to 445 for every 1,000 live births. At the accelerated spread of parasitic-reduced river blindness have occurred. In a country where literacy was 92%, and even higher in the countryside, literacy campaigns in indigenous language was initiated. Government-funded public works to build roads, schools, housing, trusting in the justice and working class and peasantry. It set up a popular revolutionary court to try former leaders and high officials accused of corruption. And as it demonstrated by the contents of this book, the revolutionary government as Sankara initiative took measures to combat age-old subjugation of women and were encouraged to organize and fight for emancipation. In August 1987, speaking from Burkina Faso on the anniversary of the revolution's uprising 4 years earlier, Sankara emphasized that the Democratic and Popular Front needs a convinced people, not a conquered people, a convinced people, not a submissive people passively enduring their fate. Growing numbers of workers, peasants, and youth issuing from the ranks of such people were becoming involved in social and political life in Burkina Faso. But on October 15, 1987, Captain Blaise Compaoré led a military coup serving the interests of those of home and abroad, whose property and class dominion were threatened by this deep-going revolution and mobilization. Sankara and his 12 aides and bodyguards were assassinated, and the revolutionary government destroyed. A week before his death, at a special commemoration in the capital of Andondon, Sankara had spoken about Ernesto Che Guevara, the Argentine-born leader of the Cuban Revolution, who died in combat 20 years earlier during an internationalist mission in Bolivia. Sankara, speaking of Che's legacy, noticed that revolutions as individuals can be killed, but you cannot kill their ideas. Thomas Sankara has himself been a symbol for millions of workers, peasants, and youth throughout Africa, especially those who recognize as the Bunke Revolution and its continual political heritage as a source of political ideas and inspiration for battles of genuine liberation on the continent. In addition to Sankara's speech on March 8, 1987, commemorating International Women's Day, this collection also includes a section from the Revolutionary Basic Program documents. Sankara's political orientation speech is shortly issued after the revolutionary triumph and broadcast over the radio and television to people throughout the country. Both items are reprinted from Pathfinder Collection, Thomas Sankara Speaks. From his experience as a revolutionary fighter and his materialistic understanding of history, Sankara explained that there were historical roots of women oppression and why revolutionaries must fight to eradicate it. He paid special attention to the challenges facing women's emancipation in Africa. Sankara's March 1987 speech is enduring tribute to the fight for women emancipation and is relevant for North America and Europe as it is for Africa, as well as for women and men fighting against all forms of exploitation and oppression worldwide. Sankara weaved ties between solidarity between Burkina Faso and revolutionary struggles in Central America and the Caribbean. In 1986, he spoke at Morel, Nicaragua, on behalf of the international guests of 200,000-strong rally marking the 25th anniversary of the Sandinista National Liberation Front. Shortly after Sankara's murder, Dorothy Wilson, a leader of the 1979 revolution, overthrow of the Sumerian dictatorship and a member of the Nicaraguan National Assembly at the time, paid the following tribute to his contribution. As a Nicaraguan woman whose ancestral roots are closely linked to the merciless exploitation of millions of blacks in Latin America and the Caribbean, Wilson wrote, what Sankara said about the situation of women in his remarkable speech of March 8, 1987, is extremely important. In it, Sankara not only explained the historical origins of women's oppression, but throughout the speech he gave specific examples of daily and intimate character of machismo in society. This speech is not only a declaration of principles, but also have a profound understanding of the active and solidarity within the struggle of women, which will in fact belongs to all and involves all of humanity. In an interview during this time, Sankara reveals how he stood up against the president of Zaire, Mobutu Sese Seko, on the question of organization of African unity will be only for black states. Because Sankara had during his life waged a successful battle to get the Western Sahara, according to Sankara, they are Africans, and most of them are white, recognized by the OAU, including their struggle to end Moroccan occupation. When he spoke in Harlem, he wowed those with his pistol belt demonstrations and said he was ready to face imperialism, and that when he fires a gun, it would be against imperialism on behalf of all the black people, all those who may suffer any sorts of dominance, and even for whites who are true brothers of the black people. In the same interview, he praised Cuban volunteers that fought to defend Angola independence over the security victory of the South Africa invasion to Namibia to become independent. Nelson Mandela was released from prison and contributed to the downfall of the apartheid regime. The following month, he went to Cuba and was given an honorary medal of the Order of Joe T. Martin, which symbols you can see Fidel's Campo nailed into Sankara's chest in a picture in the new book. Sankara spoke again at the AAU on July 29, 1987, for creating a united front to write off the Third World Department. According to Sankara, it was not a question of respecting their comments, but it was the same former colonial masters who put the colonized countries in debt slavery that now continue to be their advisors in regarding their financial resources and how they make reasonable terms for new loans. He said that Burkina Faso will do for themselves, and he will be assassinated before the next OAU conference. But with everybody's support, when we can avoid pain, according to Sankara, working people in Europe should support the demand because they are not in contradiction with the popular masses of Africa. Those who want to exploit Africa and those who want to exploit Europe are the same. Just like Che Guevara and Fidel Castro, with great success before him, Sankara in 1984 used forth the hand of the UN General Assembly as a platform to speak not against statesmen, but against for the whole oppressed world. He defended the workers and farmers government of Nicaragua just as outspoken as he spoke for the 200,000 Nicaraguans in Manila on the 20th anniversary since the Sandinista movement was formed. He stood by the side of the Afghan and Irish people, the people of Grenada, and East Timor. Sankara told that Burkina Faso is a part of a long chain of struggle since childhood and capitalism, from the French-American revolutions, from the Paris Commune to the Russian revolutions, and so forth. In the UN, Sankara spoke for the 11th poorest country in the world, where 7 million women, children, and men refuse to die out of ignorance, hunger, and thirst any longer. When he said he meant so business, in a French documentation, Sankara, a journalist from Rwanda, David Kazim, said that under the 4 years Sankara, can grade every Nubabe 2 meals per day. Sankara looked upon the revolution as a giant construction site. We have be proud to build what we have and being able to give the people some access to apartments. He pointed to the women, for example, who were granted the most out of the revolution, worked to resolve the water problem everywhere, popularizing their stoves that reduced the use of firewood and burn slower, creating daycare centers for a whole population, making regular vaccinations. In 1985, the birth of mortality had fallen to 208 to 145 per thousand born. The literacy among the entire population fell from 92% to 78%. Also, farmers moving into the city got access to useful jobs, as well as unemployment in the rise. In the countryside, a system of forced labor and head taxes for the chief was abolished. The soil was nationalized so farmers would be guaranteed to have land as long as they tilled it. The government started controlling the prices so the basic products of the farmers started rising. In his speech at the International Women's Day, March 8, 1987, Sankara pointed to the importance of women organization in 1986, which is claimed being a main success because of the women of Burkina was everywhere present. The country is built. In his speech Sankara had in the beginning of 1984, Sankara raised a question on how workers and farmers were mobilized to take the lead in the justice system against the corruption among the different politicians and officials working in the CNR. The judge appointed Sankara will be appointed with a worker and only by workers. The rest were soldiers or policemen and 5 persons from the CDR. The trials were public for ordinary people and the media. They were not organized with revenge against different political opponents. For example, the ex-president Selma Lamisa, accused of irrational use of public resources, was claimed not guilty. Marxism as a collection of European ideas. His stance to the different military coup regimes and the program of the revolution, the political orientation speech in his relation with the Cuban Revolution, is his view on oppression against women and the fight for liberation, and later in attempts to reconstruct a vanguard organization that should be able to save the revolution. You can clearly see that it was a person who, according to himself, had read everything by Lenin. Sankara was not only a leader of the national liberation in Africa, but also showed solidarity with all revolutions that took place during his time, and attempted to form a united front for abolishing Third World debt, which he confers with Fidel Castro. He was together with Maurice Bishop of Grenada and Malcolm X, one of the proletarian leaders during the 20th century that emerged among oppressed people, and even then, in the most underdeveloped nations. It was a revolution that Lenin and the leaders of the Communist International had already predicted. Thomas Sankara died fighting for what he believed in, the revolution. As he stated before, revolutions as individuals can be killed, but you cannot kill the ideas. He became a symbol for millions of workers, peasants, and youth throughout Africa, who especially recognized the Blueberry Revolution and its continued political heritage. So we got to continue this brother, what he did, how he brought the country back and got it out of debt. For we produce what we make, and we should only eat what we produce. That's the first step of revolution. Y'all have a wonderful day being self-reliant. Y'all have a wonderful day and respect the ancestors of Thomas Sankara. Peace.